luxury, style, reliability, comfort, individuality, and monumentality. All these epithets rightly belong to the Maybach collection cars. While all these are true, in 2012 the production of Maybach models was stopped. The reason, how it all began, why it ended is going to be described in this episode. We should try to figure out how it happened that the amazingly exclusive and expensive premium cars to which Maybach was rightly referred are no longer produced and the legendary brand's history ended. And how the mighty Maybach dynasty invented a luxury vehicle, dwindled and became just a trim level is going to be discussed in length in this episode. Let's start with the Maybach dynasty. The key figure in the appearance of the German automaker, Maybach, was its founder, Wilhelm Maybach, the father of Karl, who continued his parents' activity. Wilhelm was born in the family of a carpenter as early as 1846. The place of his birth was the town of Heilbronn. When his father died, Willie was only 10 years old. He was taken by Pastor Werner, who organized a kind of brotherhood house. The latter was associated with a machine-building factory in Reutlingen. So at the age of only 15, Wilhelm went to work there. Theoretical studies of drawing and natural sciences alternated with practical lessons in the design bureau of the factory in Reutlingen, as well as in the workshops. After school, Wilhelm continued his education at the town's non-classical secondary school. He began to study English and theoretical mechanics. He didn't lack purposefulness in learning of sciences. His ability and high workability were noticed by the technical director of Reutlingen factory, and as a result, the latter, having moved to Karush, remembered a talented young man and invited him to work in his company, which built internal combustion engines. This technical director of now the company Deutz was none other than Gottlieb Daimler. If the name Daimler sounds familiar, it's the name of the company that owns Mercedes-Benz. Together with Wilhelm Maybach, he got involved with the creation of small, compact, and lightweight, in comparison with stationary ones, internal combustion engines for transport. One of the firm Deutz's owners, Langen, wasn't against this idea, but the second, Otto, did not accept it at all. As a result, Gottlieb Daimler moved from Karlsruhe to Bad Cannstatt and opened his own business. It was 1882 and the 36-year-old Wilhelm had already decided to go with Gottlieb Daimler to become his companion. An agreement was concluded in which Maybach took responsibility for technical design, and if it came to commercial development he would receive a solid premium, one of monetary compensation. A year later, Maybach created his own stationary internal combustion engine. The construction involved the engine functioning on a coal gas. Next, a sample with a working volume of 1.4 liters and a capacity of 1.6 horsepower appeared. The next step was the creation of a new ignition system by means of an incandescent tube, which ensured sustainable, stable operation of the engine even at a low speed. Later, a single-cylinder air-cooled engine appeared, reaching 0.525 horsepower at 600 RPM. That was all right for a while, but Maybach was constantly striving to perfection, modernization, renewal of already created things. He received more and more patents for inventions, simplified constructions, and even designed them aesthetically. As a result of his efforts and talented hands, a vaporizing carburetor, which allowed to abandon the coal gas and start using liquid fuel, appeared. In the autumn of 1885, with the participation of Wilhelm Maybach's Karl and Daimler's son Paul, a revolutionary technological event took place. There were tests of the engine, created by Wilhelm, in the moving of a motorbike, predecessor of a motorcycle. There were two speed modes, 4 and 7 miles per hour, as well as a constant speed of the engine. Only then there were the tests of the engine on a four-wheeled car, a motorboat, and participation in the Paris World Exhibition in 1889 with the first ever V-shaped two-cylinder engine with the included angle of 17 degrees. Such an angle at 900 RPM developed a capacity of astonishingly amazing for that time 1.6 horsepower. Wheels were set in motion by conventional gear instead of the previous built-on. This was already a commercial success with the sale of a patent. Gerda Daimler created for Maybach a separate workshop and sought to support his talented companion in every possible way. After all, the shareholders demanded results. In 1894, Maybach received a patent for the design of hydraulic brakes, and a year later its two-cylinder straight-engine Phoenix appeared. Originally, it reached 2.5 horsepower at 750 RPM, but the design was gradually improved, and in 1896, just 2 years later, its capacity reached 5 horsepower, double that amount. New radiator of the original construction allowed to improve the engine's performance, and in 1899 four-cylinder Phoenix, a 5.9-liter engine with just 23 horsepower. The engine was installed in a racing car, created by ambassador of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Nice, Emil Jelinek, and he won the Nice La Tourbill mountain race on this car on March 21, 1899. Jelinek acted under the Mercedes pseudonym. It was his daughter's name, which soon became a trademark of the Daimler factory and later became the name of the Mercedes brand. However, the following year, in the year 1900, Gottlieb Daimler died and Maybach left in the position of a supplicant compelled to work to increase the salary. His engineering talent held the whole company, but its leadership didn't appreciate this. Still, among all of this, Wilhelm Maybach was the one that in 1904 developed the first 6-cylinder car engine with a capacity of 120 horsepower. Instead of being celebrated, he was humiliated and forced to leave the firm Daimler, and in his 61st year to apply for support to Count F. Zeppelin. The Count was really fond of airships. Maybach, together with his son Karl, with the synthesis of Zeppelin, in 1909 opened an engine-building company, Maybach Motorbau GmbH, on the shore of Lake Baden in Friedrichshafen. The firm was led by Karl Maybach, and his father was a lead consultant and stopped working only at a very advanced age after the First World War. Only in 1918 Maybach Motorbau GmbH became independent and 3 years later released the first car, placing a bet on its products, luxury, and reliability from the start. Contemporaries called Maybach the king of designers. In 1922, the German Engineers Association noted one of the modern car's fathers as a pioneering designer. That was true. A year before, when the 75-year-old engineer no longer worked, the first car of the famed Maybach brand was built at the factory in Friedrichshafen under the direction of Karl Maybach. The first model of Maybach, the W3, was presented at the Burley Motor Show in 1921, 100 years ago. The car was initially positioned as one for very wealthy buyers who prefer reliability and comfort to external luxury, therefore they bet not on expensive finishing materials but on the highest quality of all units, through assembly, driving simplicity, and safety. The W3 was equipped with brakes on all 4 wheels, unlike other modern cars having only 2 braking wheels, and a unique gear shift system. There were only 3 of them. The first, low hill climbing, in the reverse. Each of them was shifted into by a separate pedal, and there was no clutch pedal at all. The Maybach 12 was introduced in 1929 equipped with a 12-cylinder engine and an automatic transmission, and in the same year, 1929, on December the 29th, Wilhelm Maybach dies, showing the whole world that designing a car is not the construction of a wagon with a motor but the complex of all its components. The next era is Maybach, Zeppelin, and Maybach. In the 1930s, the Maybach 12 or the Maybach DS7 was created. By that time, Maybach Motor Bureau GmbH became a supplier of engines for the Zeppelins again. That is why the Maybach DS7 received its own name, Zeppelin. It was considered the best among modern luxury cars, and its cost was equal to 1,000 average monthly wages of a German worker of that time. This car cost from 39,000 marks. At that time, there were no 2 identical cars of this model. They were all produced under the order, and their design fully included the individual needs of its customer. In total, 183 such cars were made. The model of 1931, the Maybach DS8 Zeppelin differed with not only more powerful and volumetric engine but a 5-speed gearbox that had 2 reverse speeds, and the engine shifted up another gear as soon as the driver stopped pushing the gas pedal. German auto journalists called this car representative of the highest automotive society. In a few years of this model's production, only 200 copies were made under the order. The cost of the Maybach DS8 Zeppelin reached 40,000 marks. It's noteworthy that the driver of this 3-ton limousine was supposed to have the right to drive trucks. According to the valid at the time German laws, cars with a weight of not more than 2.5 tons were considered passenger ones. So this was considered a truck. The SW line, the most massive in the company's history, appeared as a consequence of Karl Maybach's idea to expand the client base. These cars didn't have such huge engines as the previous ones and saw frightening prices, starting from only 13,000 marks, but still remained premium cars. First of all, that was due to the traveling comfort. The abbreviation in the model name stands for Schwingerschwagen, a car with swinging axles. The SW35 released in 1935 had a 6-cylinder engine and much simpler control system than Zeppelin 1. Now customers who bought Maybach cars could waste no time learning to handle complex gears and not put an experienced hired chauffeur behind the wheel and drive themselves without any trouble. The Maybach SW42, the last in the line and the last pre-war Maybach model, became a little longer and got a new engine with increased volume. Accordingly, the top speed of the car also increased. This model was preferred by high-ranking Nazi officials and major German industrialists, among whom were, for example, the Reich Minister of Propaganda, Dr. Goebbels, and the famous aircraft designer Ernst Heinkel. Such cars cost from 20,000 marks. During the pre-war period, the company produced 1,800 cars which were distinguished by their excellent technological equipment with luxurious exterior and interior. To date, there have been 152 Maybach cars in the world since pre-war times. Since 1936, almost all German tanks were equipped with Maybach engines. They were installed on one of the most famous tanks of the Second World War, Panzer III, and its heir, Panzer IV, the most massive tank of the Wehrmacht, German war machine, and the infamous Tigers and Panthers, not to mention the numerous modifications and variations of these models. In 1941, with the beginning of the war on the Eastern Front, Maybach had to phase out the production of luxury cars and switch completely to the development and production of tank engines. But even after the surrender, car production did not resume. The market needed very different cars. In 1960, the company was acquired by the concern Daimler-Benz, but it took another 36 years before the Maybach brand returned to market. The Maybach 57 was the first model introduced in 2002 after a 60-year break. This variation was positioned as a driver's car that is for those luxury car owners who prefer to sit at the wheel themselves. It's interesting that creating this model, its designer deliberately made the car not too fast, according to the creator's idea. There is nowhere and no need to hurry to those who own this four-wheeled luxury. The price of this pleasure started from around $40,000. The Maybach 62 was presented at the same time with the Maybach 57 and in fact differed just in. Due to a more spacious cabin, this car immediately moved into the car for the passenger class. That is, it's assumed that the owner never sits on the driver's seat and is located on one of the two rear seats with folding back. There was such a remarkable moment in the history of this model. On June 26, 2002, this car, enclosed in a glass box, traveled from Southampton to New York across the Atlantic aboard the Queen Elizabeth II liner. It was guarded by press and production company executive and then from the New York port to Regent Hotel on Wall Street. The cost of this car started from $500,000. The Maybach Laundlet costs already from $1 million. A fantastic white cabriolet from Maybach was first presented to the public in November 2007 as a concept car, created on the basis of the Maybach 62, and its serial production and sales began 2 months later. Taking the 62 as a basis, designers removed from it many elements of the rear part on which the hardtop was held and replaced it with a fabric top that was retracted in a few seconds by an electro-hydraulic drive. And the remaining rear quarter pillars were strengthened with special tubular structures. The Maybach Guard is the last model of this brand, which appeared on the market in 2011. It's also based on the Maybach 62, but differs from it with strong armor. And the weight of the armored car is more than its prototype weight by only 406 kilos, so that the car accelerates to a speed of 100 km/h or 60 miles per hour in just 5.7 seconds. The price started from around $500,000. The Maybach Celero is the only sports car in the Maybach line and at the same time is one of the most expensive cars of our time. It's noteworthy that it was created not to gain a new market segment, but for advertising super high-speed tires of the German company Fulda. Even the name of the model is inherited from the tire's name, Accelero. The first copy was assembled manually and presented to the public on May 1, 2005 at the Nardo Testing Ground in southern Italy, a top speed of almost 352 kilometers per hour on that day. The first owner of this model was rapper Brian Williams, known as Birdman, and he purchased the car for $8 million. In general, a similar sports car costs no more than $7.8 million. Today, there are only 50 specialized service centers in the world, in which only professionals work. They will help the owner of Maybach solve all of his problems with the car, make quality repairs and servicing. These cars' manufacturers provide the owner with a guarantee for 4 years of free service and repair. Unfortunately, the aspirations of Daimler Gesellschaft to revive the legendary brand were not justified. The sales of Maybach cars turned out to be very low and did not justify money invested in them. They didn't manage to compete worthy with Bentley and Royce. As a result, in the end of 2011 it was decided to abandon the production of cars under this brand. The reasons of Maybach closure. First, it's believed that Maybach cars couldn't sustain the competition and significantly lagged behind their rivals in the class. It's no secret that all brands updated their models with an enviable regularity, constantly upgrading them, and Maybach continued to produce luxurious but quite conservative cars. As a result, sales of Maybach in 2007 to 2011 did not exceed 150 to 300 cars. Therefore, the concerned Daimler decided to pay more attention to the development of smart cars, yes, the small two-person rear-wheel drive automatic pocket rockets, for which it conducted close negotiations about further cooperation with such brands as Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Renault. Secondly, despite the cost of each car in the range of $500,000, manufacturers lost almost the same amount of money on each such car. In total, for the entire production of Maybach cars, more than €1 billion were invested in the project. Thirdly, during the 7-year production of the model, attempts were made repeatedly to update this line or modernize the existing ones. In particular, one of the most promising solutions was the release of a crossover, which was planned to be assembled on the basis of GL class cars. In addition, the Maybach 52 project, a short-wheeled budget variant Maybach 57 Cabriolet 4-door type, was also offered. By the way, the idea of the latest development became the basis for the creation of the Mercedes Ocean Drive. Fourthly, Daimler previously negotiated with Aston Martin about the creation of a new Maybach car generation. The joint project was to replace the obsolete 5,762 models. The presentation of the novelties was to be made at the Frankfurt Motor Show, but unfortunately it never took place. As a result of all the above reasons, the concern's management decided not to modernize the brand as it lost a lot of time and it was very expensive to catch up competitors. And it would be more appropriate to simply close the brand. Thus, the produced Maybach cars were transferred to the category of collector's copies. The history of the Maybach brand, most likely, can be considered to be finished on this. Still, the year is 2016. Mercedes-Benz unveils the Vision Mercedes-Maybach 6 at the Pebble Beach, Concours de Lagat. While the Maybach line has a storied history, many thought it was a dead or dying brand. Did this new concept car, along with the S650 and the G650, mean Mercedes-Benz is giving the Maybach line a new life, and will it work? It's not the first time in history when Maybach just laid there dormant. Many people never realized that Maybach was a subsidiary of the German corporation Daimler AG since the 1960s. However, many of the vehicles created at that time were just special editions of other Mercedes vehicles. So the cars in question still bore the name and insignia of Mercedes rather than Maybach. Many of the strikes against the rollout hinged on the fact that Maybach line seemed to offer more in features and amenities than it did in drivability. It built itself as more of a limousine you enjoy a ride in rather than a luxury vehicle you drive. In addition, the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008 put a halt to a lot of spending in general. Regardless of how things transpired, the Maybach line was discontinued in 2012. Still, it did not stay dead for long. In 2014, the Maybach line was once again revived, and in 2015 it put out the new Mercedes-Maybach line of luxury vehicles, starting with the S500 and S600. This vehicle aimed to compete once again with the ultra-luxury offerings of Bentley and Rolls-Royce. However, Mercedes-Maybach did not stop there. It's obvious this time around Mercedes-Maybach has far larger plans. While the Vision 6 is just a concept, much like the Accelero, it can give some insight into the direction Mercedes-Maybach plans to go. The 2017 S550 and S600, later on with the S650, can be seen to draw some inspiration from the Vision 6 concept. This car is a gull-winged marvel. It's a reinterpretation of a classic design, modern aerodynamic. While it does not look tacky as many modern automobile designs are training towards, the interior design looks like something you'll find in a science fiction movie. The windshield is a transparent display, and the interior can look something like a full lounge. It has an electric car design with 4 electric motors. It can also go from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. It's a car that looks like the future of luxury travel. There are also Mercedes-Maybach S-Class models to look to and the just announced Mercedes-Maybach S-Class SUV Maybach trim to look to. And now in 2021, this begs the question: is Mercedes-Maybach in a position to challenge Rolls-Royce with its massive SUVs and Bentley with its massive SUV in the uber luxury realm of automobiles? Mercedes-Benz certainly hopes so. Even if the Vision 6 never becomes a production model, knock on wood, hoping it does, it probably won't, it does give a good look at what Mercedes-Maybach is working toward. Amazing cars for the Chinese market, with its round shapes, not at all German or European or American design. The company reported the electric drivetrain of the Vision 6 was definitely heading towards mass production. There is also the upcoming proliferation of self-driving cars. As manufacturers of vehicles always build as chauffeur cars, this might really be my box time to shine and the last time it actually had to close its gates. That's all for today. Tell me in the comment section below, have you ever seen a Maybach, or better yet, have you ever been sat in a Maybach, or the driver's wheel, or in the back, doesn't really matter. I haven't seen one in real life, and of course I haven't been sat in one. That's all for today. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe.